This week in One Piece, we had US nationals with some familiar faces taking the top spots. We had some pretty interesting price rises, primarily out of the PRB01 set, and we also had a whole lot of garbage get revealed. So it was going to be hard to top last week with all the SRs from EB02 being revealed, and they certainly haven't managed to do it. The reveals this week are very underwhelming. First up might be the best one. This is Carving Hoof Cherry Blossom Blizzard. This is a 3-cost event with the Animal, Water 7 and Straw Hat Crew types. You can activate main, give 3 of your leader, all characters, plus 1000 power for the turn. Then, you KO one of your opponent's characters with 3000 power or less. So this is quite comparable to the card that we got in OPO8 for the Chopper deck, Cloven Hoof Roseo. I believe this is Cloven Rose in English. What that did was the same effect, give 3 things 1000 power, couldn't target your leader, so slightly worse, and then you gave one of your opponent's characters minus 2000 for the turn. So I do think this new one is significantly better. KOing a 3000 power unit is definitely miles better than a 2k debuff. Also, it's not going to be as useful if you're trying to take down something like a Tap Jack. It's going to be miles better because you can get rid of these chump blockers, and aggro decks typically aren't attacking into your opponent's bodies all that much. And so removing one of the blockers, like a Rebecca blocker, or an Onami blocker, or even a Roginante blocker, I think is definitely going to be better than the -2. Obviously, this does cost 1 more, but it can also target your leader, so it's a little more flexible. I think this is reasonable in both Zoro and Chopper with that animal engine. Especially in Chopper, you can play this out and then use those 3 Don that you paid to fulfill your leader effect, putting 3 Don on 3 different things. Not sure this is going to see a ton of play, but it's definitely something I experiment with in Zoro and Chopper once it comes out. Next up, we've got Gum Gum Giant Pistol. People were sort of talking about this one, I think a little more than they should have been. This is a 3-cost event with the Straw Hat Crew and Water 7 types. A lot of Water 7 themed cards, but not really going with Iceberg, which is amusing. This has Activate Main. You give one of your Straw Hat Crew type characters plus 6000 power for the turn, then that character does not become active during your next refresh phase. Excuse me. So the main combo that people immediately pointed out was with 9-cost Zoro. It kind of makes sense, but I'm not going to lie, I feel like 3 12s and 3 15s isn't the greatest amount of difference. Your opponent is going to have a difficult time countering out of a 12 regardless, unless they've got some like crazy leader buffs with a Red Purple Luffy. But either way, I see the combo, but I'm not sure this is quite good enough to warrant including, especially in something like a Bonnie deck. Where I'm a little bit more interested is in Red Green Luffy. This leader has been terrible for a long time, and I'm not sure this makes him much better. But it is going to be searchable in that deck because they do run the Nami Searcher, and being able to double dip on this effect by then restanding the character is pretty cool. Not really sure what you're putting this buff on, but you know, maybe you can come up with something pretty interesting if you're a Red Green Luffy main. Also, just a small nod that this Chopper restands itself, so you don't have the negative effect of not becoming active during the refresh phase, because he stands himself flat back up during your turn, and you don't need to wait for the refresh phase. Don't think this card is going to see very much play at all, unless we get a new leader or a new card that's going to take better advantage of it than what we currently have. Next up, we've got a 2-cost event. That time is when your friend's dreams are laughed at. This is Alabasta and Straw Hat Crew. Very little synergy with either of them. It has a counter. It's a counter event. This turn, when one of your characters would be KO'd in battle, you may instead discard 1 card from your hand. So, this is kind of interesting. Mainly, I'm thinking in Usopp. It sort of makes sense because he draws a lot of cards, right? I think the biggest issue with this card is to defend any of your characters, you have to have 2 Don up, and then you have to play this, which is not great. It's not great at all. And then you've got to have to give another card as well. So at the very minimum, you're giving 2 cards to save 1 character from a battle KO, which is not very efficient, especially if you're holding 2 Don up. You could easily use that on something like a Love Love Mellow, even just within blue, to probably defend the character and also draw a card. which seems better than this. Obviously, you can use this more than once per turn. This effect does linger. I'm just not sure what we're doing here. Obviously, this can let you get your hand size down a little bit to draw cards with Usopp's effect. And this does also work on blockers. So you could, in theory, like, chump block a 10-cost Shanks with a 1-cost Chopper. And then just give up 1 card plus this to save the blocker. But I just don't really know why we're doing that. This doesn't seem very good. I'm not really sure what they were going for on this one. This is possibly the worst card ever printed. Argue with me on in the comments on that. I truly think this is a contender for worst card ever. This is a 4-cost event, Germa 66. Main, you may discard a character with 4,000 or less power and the Germa 66 type from your hand. The number of Don cards on your board is equal to or less than your opponent's. Play a character from your trash that has 5,000 to 7,000 power and the same name as the discarded card. This is incredibly convoluted. This is basically a way to use the Germa package in leaders that aren't Reiju, because these baby Vinsmokes are locked to Germa 66 leaders, and this isn't technically, but like you have to have equal or less Don than your opponent. So if you're playing a purple ramp deck, this isn't going to work. So you've got to be playing a deck that's already going low on Don. You've got to have this in your hand. You've got to have this in your trash. And you've got to have this in... This is terrible. This is like the most convoluted combo ever to get out a really average unit for 4 Don. In Reiju, there is absolutely no reason to play this. You're better off doing this because the Don -1 is like the only thing you get out of, but then you wouldn't get your Reiju effect. This is terrible. If you can think of any use at all for this, and please don't say blue purple croc. I saw someone say that, and that was too crazy for me. Too crazy for me. But yeah, if you can think of any reason why you would include this in any leader ever, let me know. But until then, I truly think this is the worst card of all time. Next up, we've got another pretty bad card. We've got 3-verse Hum Arrow Notch Cut. This is a 3-cost event with the former Rumbar Pirates type, sadly. Activate main, you can choose one of the following. You can KO a 2, or you can give something -4. So this just compares incredibly poorly to other options. Yes, you have the choice, you have a little bit of flexibility in this card, but like you compare the first effect to this card, we'll go for it. Gum Gum Diablo 3 Sword Style Mouton Jet 600-pound Cannon. Let me know how I did. This is a crazy long name, really funny. But yeah, this is the team up attack from the start deck 14. This is like an Amaru effect. If you've got that 8 cost, you get 3,000 power and KO 2 for 2 Don, which is really efficient, especially compared to this, which is 1 more, doesn't give you any power, and still KOs the same cost. For 1 more Don, you can play Finger Gun and KO a 5 and get a mill effect. So that effect is terrible. And the other effect giving -4, well, Ice Age does -5 for 1 Don. This is horrible. There's no reason to ever play this. And yeah, these EBO2 commons are not getting much better. Because next up we have Olga Myskina. She's a 3/4/1k with the Alchemy type. I have no idea who this character is. I've never heard of her before. But on play and on KO, you can do a Katakuri leader effect. This is horrible. This is terrible. Completely unsearchable. Trash stat line. Trash effect. Nobody cares about looking at their life that much. If you really want to, just play Katakuri leader, I guess. This is horrible. Next up, we've got Don Achino. He has the Achino family type and is an 8/10 vanilla. This is just worse than Shanks. Shanks has 2 good types. This has a completely unsearchable type. I just about remembered this guy. I think he's from a filler episode in the anime, which is kind of bizarre that he got a card to begin with, but here we are. What a time to be alive. What an ugly motherfucker. Next up, we've got the Imposter Straw Hat Crew. Little imposter here. And this is a 2/3 with the Imposter Straw Hat Crew type. Your turn, it has +2,000 power. Opponent's turn, it has -2,000 power. Answer me this. Why the hell doesn't this have counter? This is terrible. And they didn't even give it counter? Embarrassing. Compares incredibly poorly to Monkey D. Luffy, the 2 cost from OPO 1, which might have been what they were going for. He is a 2-3 with 1k. Two good types. Don X2, he can't be carried by strike characters. And you can activate main to give him 2 rested Don. So he's effectively a 2-5 in your turn. And this is seeing no play. This card's terrible. Even in Sanji, where you might think he has a little bit of promise, this card's trash. So the Imposter Straw Hat crew, definitely not going to see any play. Again, why doesn't this have counter? That's crazy. Last up, we've got this card, Without You, I Can't Become King of the Pirates. This is a 4-cost counter event with the Straw Hat crew type. What this says is counter, give your leader or one of your characters 1000 power for the battle. Then, if your life total is 1 or less, play up to 1 yellow, cost 5 or lower, Straw Hat crew type or Sanji character from your hand. Again, what are they doing? Why are so many of these cards horrible? Like, just print vanillas at that point. Save me the effort of talking about these cards. So, if you're going to summon a 4 or less, you may as well just play it and not leave 4 Don up. This is only 1000 power. This is terrible. So, the only cards even worth thinking about are 5 costs. Here's the Sanji. He's a queen and a blocker. So, it's fine if you summon this for 1 less, but why? Why are we doing this? The only other target that's worth mentioning is this Nami. You can KO something during your opponent's turn, which isn't the worst, but again, just why are we doing this? Just play out the Nami for 5. There's no way you had to play a 6 cost and leave 4 Don up. This is frankly terrible. Also just doesn't really combo well with any yellow leaders. Like, once you're at low life, you're already in danger, and if you're leaving up 4 Don for counter events, I want to play like a whole bunch of L4s, bro. I do not want to play 4 Don for 1k counter. Dreadful. Next up, we've got a mini market watch section. Not as many crazy price rises as last week after all those SRs got announced, especially the Enel. But we have had some pretty interesting movements out of PRB. The Dons are getting to crazy prices now. Like, check out this Doflamingo Don. This is one of the most expensive ones, to be clear. But $250 for a Don is crazy. These Dons do look really good. They are stunning in person. I've not got the Doflamingo one, but I do have a few myself. And they're just excellent. But for $250, they can keep it. That's crazy money. Next up, this is the one that I prefer. This is my favourite. I've got 5 of these. I was hoping to be able to complete the set, but at these prices, it's not going to happen. This is just ridiculous. $135 for a Don. If you want a playset of these, that's nearly $1,500. That's stupid. It's just stupid. But yeah, this is the Rebecca Don. I think this is the best looking one personally. And as you can see on the chart, this was reasonably priced, sort of $40, $50 for a little bit at the start. Rapidly rose up to around $80. And it's just been on the rise since then, sadly. So if you want the gold Dons, I'm not sure this is a good time to buy. I think you're going to have to hope that there's a pretty meaty reprint, and we don't have one coming anytime soon. The only bit of reprint knowledge that I do have is there's that box that came out last week in Japan that has 5 PRB packs. So it's possible if that product contains the same things, when it comes over to the West, we might get a small reprint of PRB. Next up is the Yamato. This is wild. $115? Like, this art's great. Don't get me wrong, this art is great. And I know Yamato is a fan favourite character for 2 reasons. But yeah, this price is just bananas. There's a really nice alt art in OPO 4. But I think is not that much worse than this. I think both of them are really good. Don't buy this, obviously. But yeah, all these alt arts from PRB are sort of slowly rising in price. Now that people aren't opening it anymore, there's just less going around. People are hoarding them for their decks or for a collection, and it's rapidly becoming quite unaffordable if you want to alt out your decks with cards from PRB. Another one that's been on a bit of a tear lately is the Red Rock. Boa is seeing a little bit more play in Japan than it was before. Interestingly enough, that 7 cost Kairos has given it a really nice buff. Obviously not hitting as high a card as the 7 cost Doflamingo, but just being a massive dude is pretty good. So people are sort of thinking about buying these red rocks. And these alt art events also just look really good. The alt art characters, a lot of them already have alt arts that you can get from the main set. These are the only prints of these, and they are so much nicer than the regular ones. So I'm not too surprised by this. But either way, $40, $50 is silly money. Look at this. It was like $20, $30 for ages. And all of a sudden, last few days, it spiked up. I don't particularly know why. Maybe this is just people prepping for Boa. But who knows? But either way, that's one that was amusing to point out. And here are the PRB prices in general. As you can see, if you're looking for Dons, like, man, this is crazy. $100. I think this is one of the nicer ones, I'm not going to lie. I think this Kaido one is really good. So for the fact that it's on sort of the mid to cheaper end is a little crazy. But yeah, I mean, look at this. The Zoro, like $300. We've just looked at that Dofi. These prices are bananas. I don't care about mangas. Nobody's buying those, they're ugly. But even when we go to page 2, some of the alts are just getting a little pricey. This soldier is crazy. $70 for this? Bananas. The Katakuri alt art. I think this is a sort of a reasonable price. These secret alt arts were a little bit harder to pull. And some of them are really nice. But yeah, even like this Gecko alt art, this is worse than the original. And it's more expensive than the original, which is kind of crazy. And even the sort of bulk gold dons, like the Iceberg and the Odin dons, are creeping up in value. $50 for these. This is still like within the realm of affordability. So if you're trying to get a playset, maybe consider some of these cheaper ones. But either way, these prices are just getting a little crazy. Another price that's getting a little crazy is Finger Gun. $6 for a rare? From I know it's from EB, but like, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think Weevil even got that high. And Weevil is probably a better card than Finger Gun. Either way, $6 is bananas. This has been slowly creeping up for a long time. If you didn't get these when they were like $1, I think it was a little foolish. But I don't know. I wouldn't have predicted $6 for this rare. I know it's good in Blackbeard, and Blackbeard is getting it notably better next set. That 5 cost Kuzan gives him so much more card advantage. It's kind of crazy. The price of Dragon, just like him, is rushing. This is getting a little crazy now. $9, $10 for this SR out of 07. This is approaching EB level on some of the sort of more mid cards from EB, which is kind of bananas. This guy is really good in Shanks. And any other red deck that you want to play, Bello Betty plays this. And pretty much any red deck is going to play a couple of these. But yeah, I think $10 is a little crazy for me. I certainly wouldn't be buying at these prices. I don't know if we're going to get a 07 reprint, but I don't think 07 is generally a very expensive set. So it might just be this guy being very popular. But either way, I would avoid this at $10. That's crazy. Next up, I thought this was quite surprising, because these in Europe, you can get the whole sealed pack for less than this. They're like £40 over here, and for 58 for just the Luffy. I know he's the best one by a lot. That seems a little crazy, especially when this was like 25 on Christmas. So I'm not really sure why this has spiked. Maybe just because BY won the US Nationals, and people running off to buy this. But either way, this is a little silly price, but this is not getting reprinted. So if you're a leader collector like myself, maybe this is one to watch. Don't let it go too long, because this might just stay at this price or even rise further. And lastly, some good news. OP09 prices are broadly settling, or even still dropping a little bit. These are obviously mangas and SPs. They're a little crazy. Especially this Nami. This is crazy overpriced. But it is what it is. Most of the alt leaders sitting around that $50 mark. Some slightly higher like Shanks. And some like Buggy and Lim are slightly lower. But I think around that $50 mark is where I like to see these alt art leaders. It's nice to have a bit of a quote-unquote payday when you hit one of them out of your packs. But equally, we don't want them to be too expensive like some of the 01 leaders. I want people to be able to play with these cards, not to just rot in people's binders and collections. So it's really nice that they're fairly affordable. And the alt arts from this set, some of the more popular ones around that $20-25 mark, like the Teach and the Shanks. And then as we get down, some of the less popular cards being like $10. I think these prices are good. I think they're very reasonable. If you're looking to pick up 09 cards, I wouldn't particularly wait any longer. I think these prices are fair. And without knowing, obviously, what's going to get released and how the markets are going to change, I think expecting them to drop massively more may be foolish. But either way, that was it for the Market Watch section. Just a short segment this week. And let's get back to the tournaments. Next up, next section, we had the US Nationals. This was around a 500 player tournament out in America, invite only, unlike other nationals such as Europe. So mostly just really top players at this event, really high level of competition. Pretty cool. I have heard a rumor that we're getting these invite events in Europe next season, but that remains to be seen until we get official confirmation from Bandai. As soon as we do, it will be on the channel, don't you worry. But for now, US Nationals was a really cool event, and it was taken down by Cross AI. Make sure you follow Cross AI on YouTube and X. A fellow content creator, has some really cool videos, really insightful on a whole bunch of different decks. And this was his BY Luffy list. Pretty interesting. Nothing too crazy. BY Luffy has been mostly ironed out for a while now. He's running 2 of the Raygo, good into a lot of the newer matchups, nice into Shanks, nice into Blackbeard. One of the Trash Sabo is interesting. This is in and out of lists, but Cross has chosen to play it. No Rush Ace is also interesting. That's also another card that's in and out of lists. Not always there, but quite often there. So to see none of them is a little interesting. One of the Ivankov blocker, and 2 of the Shirahoshi blocker. Getting down just any level of blockers is really good into Blackbeard, because it forces their removal to go on your blockers rather than any of your bigger characters, which is quite good, and stops them developing Jesus if they want to remove these with things like events, which is also very useful for you. Full playset of the Kuzan, a really nice combo with the Luffy to remove an 8. Nothing too crazy, but that was Cross AI's BY Luffy list. Believe he is going to have a video explaining his decisions more in depth. So make sure you subscribe to his YouTube if you want to see that when it goes out. And second place was taken by K Strider. Apologies, I couldn't find any of K Strider's social media, so I can't link it here, but here we are. This was K Strider's Lucci list. Pretty interesting list actually. Is opting to play the stage Uta, which is quite cool. This is really nice into a lot of those matchups like Doflamingo and Purple Luffy, just to get a bit of reduction that's quite hard to interact with, because it can't be carried in battle by leaders. So they have to stick a character to deal with this Uta by battle, and that's difficult against Lucci, right? Because we're removing as many of their characters as possible. Uta plus leader effect plus Brook carries a 4, which is relevant into both of those matchups. So interesting to see this. I haven't really experimented that much with this. I've tried it out a couple of times, but maybe I need to give it another go. To the Kaku for, again, those low-cost units in that mid-game means that you don't have to find as many of your combo pieces to remove things like 4s. You can just use the leader effect and a Kaku, which is pretty nice. Also playing 2 of the Kaido, really good in the Blackbeard matchup. Pretty strong also in the Shanks matchup. Just good in a lot of matchups in general, but especially that Blackbeard. Down to 1 of the Sabo is becoming very common now. It doesn't mean that this deck is actually a lot cheaper than it used to be, Brook aside, because we used to be on like 3 to 4 Sabo and 3 to 4 Brook. Now we're just down to 1 Sabo. That cuts like $50-$60 off the cost, which is pretty cool. And yeah, this card is just not as useful anymore. There's a lot of matchups now where this just doesn't really do anything. Still nice into the Lucci, still nice into the BY, but outside of those, it has lost a lot of its value. Other than that, fairly standard Lucci list, opting for the Kaku over the Who's Who for a bit of extra power reduction instead of the extra KO option. Do have the Kaku, so the Who's Who, probably not needed. One of the 6 King Pistol as well. Really nice to have your 0 cost be searchable off of Spandam. But yep, that's the Lucci list that took down second. And now we'll take a look at the meta as a whole. So the top 32, shout out to Egman Events for all these graphics. If you want to see any of the other lists from this event, make sure you check out Egman Events' website. Egman's also done a video going more in depth than I on the breakdown of this tournament. So make sure you subscribe to him if somehow you're not already. The top 32 was 11 Dofi, 4 Ploufy, 4 BY, 4 Shanks, 3 Teach, 3 Lucci, and 3 Bonnie. So pretty diverse, a lot of Dofi, but interestingly, Doflamingo not present in the finals. A lot of those decks in the final four are pretty tough matchups for Dofi, both the Lucci and the BY. Not particularly favourable matchups. Lucci a little close, Luffy generally considered to be favoured for BY. So a little bit of a tough bracket for the Dofi. But either way, really impressive. To beat 11 of the top 32, it's pretty crazy. Goes to show that this deck does have a lot of power. Purple Luffy was able to make it all the way to top 8, and the same with Bonnie. And then the Blackbeard and Shanks, their highest placement was in that top 16. Lastly, good luck in Mexico or LATAM Nats, whatever you want to call it. If you're heading out there, I hope you all win. Best of luck. Get that invite to Worlds. There's not many left. And it'd be really exciting to see what managed to take this one down. Will BY do it again? I hope not. With that being said, thank you for watching, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your day.